For your outside of the box project, to begin, we're going to create some sketches. And we want these sketches to work within the rule of thirds as we discussed in the assignment. So for this part, we're going to need a piece of paper, whether that is sketchbook paper or some other type of paper. You're going to want a ruler, and you're going to want a pencil. And of course, your photo references of the subject that you have chosen. To begin, you want to place a border on your paper. So in the instructions, it suggests a 1.5 to 2 inch border on your paper. This border is going to be the outside part of the box, and of course, by creating a border, you're going to create a box in the middle. So I'm going to work with a 2-inch border here. So I've measured 2 inches from each side. I'm going to give my paper a 1/4 of a turn, and I'm going to measure 2 inches on each side here. Now that I have my border drawn, I'm going to add the rule of thirds to my paper. Now this is something you could possibly eyeball, meaning you can kind of judge within the confines of your paper, 1/3 of the way from the left edge, 1/3 of the way from the right edge, that you would have 1/3 equal spaces. But I can also measure that. So my paper measures 9 inches, 1/3 of that is 3. So I'm going to make marks every 3 inches. And lightly draw these lines, because the rule of thirds that we're working with is not going to be part of our composition so much in that we will see the lines. It's just going to be a guide for placing our subject matter. I'm going to again give my paper a 1/4 of a turn, and I can once again measures 12 inches this way. 1/3 of 12 inches is 4 inches, so I'm going to make marks every 4 inches. And again, I'm going to make these lines light because I don't want to keep the lines. I just need them as a guide for placing my subject. So my darker lines are my border. This is where I want most of my subject to be located. As per the instructions, I want to place my subject somewhere within the rule of thirds. So that is where these lines that we drew last, the very light ones, cross over. That is where we want a main part of our subject to be. So if it is something as simple as some sort of flower, you could have the center of the flower here, or the area in which one of the largest petals appear. Depends on the flower shape. And then within this composition, you could have the stem, the leaves, whatever this image of the flower may entail. And again, you should be looking at some photo references, not to copy an exact image, but to get an idea of shapes and forms that this object has. So just to make something up really quickly, I'm going to just sketch out a quick little flower. If I place it here and it has multiple petals, I want some of those petals to go outside of my border. If I do have a stem here, I again want things to go outside of my border, but like I said, I want most of my subject to be within this center rectangle with parts extending out on at least 3 sides. So I have a simple stem coming down to the bottom of the paper and off. I have a leaf here going off this direction. I have a leaf here going off in this direction. And anything else that I may like within my photo reference or to add to the subject. It could be as simple as there's other leaves attached to it and continue to move outside of this box into the border or even off the page. Even if I wanted more than just one flower, maybe there's another flower, more distant flower, maybe it's angled differently and it will be over here. But I'm starting to just sketch out the position of a possible composition for this image or my subject matter. So once I have the sketch started, then I would want to come in with a little bit more detail. So again, if the center of my flower has a certain texture or look to it, I may want to start applying that, giving indications of that texture and form that is happening within that. I may want to start clearly identifying shapes of petals that would occur with this particular flower that I have chosen as my image reference, and I'm going to start coming in here and darkening things up. If I wanted a flower in which there's multiple layers of petals, and I will indicate that and draw that in here also. So the goal is to start off with a border, because the border is going to play an important part. We're going to do one type of material and look to our eventual watercolor painting inside of the border, and then outside of this box, which is why we call it outside of the box project, we're going to do something else. So this would be one idea for a composition. So for each of your 3 sketch ideas and compositions that you are to create, you want to first apply a border to your paper. Again, I suggest in the directions a 1.5 to 2 inch border. Once you have your border placed, then you want to divide your image or your composition, your work surface, into the rule of thirds. So again, that is very light lines indicating 1/3 from the left edge, from that mark 1/3 over through the middle, and from that mark 1/3 from the right edge. And that's the same thing no matter which direction you turn your paper. Remember, the rule of thirds is to help us place an important part of our composition. So in this case, I placed my largest flower head here. I've placed a more background looking or smaller image of a flower in behind. It's close to a rule of thirds. And I want my composition and my subject to go outside of the box, into the border, and off of the page on at least 3 sides. So that is the process of getting your sketches started for the outside of the box project.